And Mike Elko, he's built out a coaching staff, and I think a lot of fans are happy about that, about the staff so far. Can you confirm this, Drew?
I can definitely confirm this, man. If you want me to get right into it, it kind of hit me out of left field when Jimbo was fired. And I know we had kind of a rough couple of years, but even down to the day it happened, it was pretty crazy to me. I mean, even when I just think back to like a couple months ago, we're just like square in the Jimbo era, if you will. And then all of a sudden it's done and we have a whole new coaching staff at the helm. It's still kind of hard to wrap my mind around, especially for me, considering I've only been doing this since Jimbo's been the coach. So I've exclusively been talking Jimbo Fisher's A&M for a couple of years now. But the way this staff has come together over the last couple of months, it's been remarkable, man. I think it exceeded expectations.
All right, awesome. So let's start here then. Let's talk about some of the highlights of this coaching staff. Let me ask you to walk us through some of those highlights and what they really mean to Texas A&M and maybe why this fits really well.
Okay, so you think back a couple of years of struggling that A&M has had, and I think of a couple of things that I think were addressed within this coaching staff. So I feel like A&M always came up short in close games over the last couple of years. I think Jimbo won some close games earlier in his tenure, obviously in 2020, but over the last couple of years, it just felt like A&M lacked some toughness or a little bit of grit at the end of games. Felt like
Especially
A&M
on
made the big mistakes.
especially on the road.
Oh
Especially on the
yeah. Oh
road.
man. Don't even get me started about that road drought. It's been rough. I think was the last road win the Missouri game in 2020. I think that's the last road win for Texas
Yeah, I think the
A&M.
last ranked road win was like 2016 or 2014 against Ole Miss or something like that. It's
Yeah. Yeah,
it goes
man.
all the way back to like Kevin Sumlin or something like that. It's absurd.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's been rough. So I think a lot of that goes to mindset and toughness and kind of the intangible stuff because you think about A&M, you know the talent's there. You know they've been recruiting at the highest level. Even through the Sumlin era, A&M recruited well, but besides a couple Johnny years, not much to show for it. So I guess I'll start with the tip of the iceberg, the moves, the coaching or acquisitions that in my opinion move the needle the most. And that starts with Tommy Moffitt. I think you get a great strength and conditioning program. That's kind of the besides recruiting, if you will, the lifeblood of your program is going to be strength and conditioning. First of all, because that guy is around your players year round. I mean, they're training year round. If you look at A&M social media right now, we're getting clips of Tommy Moffitt interacting with the players right now. So that's a very important piece. And what's so great about Tommy, I mean, you look at some great coaches. I'm from San Antonio, so we have the Spurs. Greg Popovich has a huge coaching lineage throughout the NBA. And that's kind of a testament to his greatness. If you look at Tommy Moffitt, I don't know if you've heard of the Moffitt method. That's kind of his methodology, his program, his his whole structure of strength and conditioning. Dozens of college programs utilize his system. So for me, that's like an instant that raises my eyebrows right away. I admittedly didn't know too much about him besides that he was at LSU for years. But if you have a guy who's so successful that other programs are picking up what this guy does, and outside of that alone, his tree of assistants have spread out throughout football as well. I am very, very excited to see what kind of a difference a guy like Tommy Moffitt can make in this program, just interacting with the guys and building his program, his strength and conditioning program here. So I think the O line specifically benefits from that. You know, this has been an injury riddled team for a couple years. I don't know if this fixes that, but it certainly can't hurt. What do you guys think about Tommy Moffitt? I think that is at the top of my list. I'm really excited about the coordinators. We'll talk about them in a second, but I just think this is something that permeates every position group.
Well, I think CD, I'll let you talk about this because you're a Big Ten West guy. So you can attest to the value of a strength and conditioning program, especially there in the Big Ten West.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're looking at Michigan right now, and Ben Herbert, right? We see everyone's like, how often do you see a strength and conditioning coach like actually be brought up to the forefront of conversations? But I think that's being happened more often, and rightfully so. I think people are more getting an insight of what happens actually in the day-to-day operations, more so in the off season, and who actually gets to interact with these players, like you mentioned, more so than ever. So yeah, this is massive. And you mentioned something, a change needed to happen, whether it was a mentality, a physicality, development with your bodies. You've seen guys like Bryce Foster, who's maybe regressed since he's been a freshman at the O line. You mentioned that getting better, which definitely needs to be happening. So yeah, I love this here. I think it's credit to Mike Elko for being able to find a guy like him and convince him to come on staff, because why wouldn't you with the resources you guys know down there in College Station? It's just like everything else there. And yeah, I think this is, again, I love that you brought this up first, because this is super important.
That's a good point. I mean, credit to Elko, because you know what Moffitt was doing? He was retired. I mean, it seemed like he was, right? He had years under his belt. He was at home. I mean, he was still working. He had his program and he was teaching that. But I mean, yeah, major credit to Elko for getting him.
Absolutely. And I like you ever see the picture of Tommy Moffitt where it was like, attention NFL scouts, these players, should not be drafted because they have, neglected their workout duties or the responsibility to their team working out. And like on that list was crazy because like Lale Collins, there's a couple other ones that are like names that you would know in the NFL. But I like that accountability, especially since like, it's starting to come out more and more that, the locker room culture these last couple years may not there might have been less accountability, and when there was accountability, it was too late, right? So I think adding some extra accountability in that program, it can only do good. I mean, these are college kids. I mean, CD and I are college kids. I mean, there's a lot of responsibility to be learned, in those years of growth. So I like that a lot. Any other? I know you said you had a couple other highlights. Give me some other
Yeah.
highlights, Drew.
Yeah. Real quick, you made an interesting point there. Maybe some accountability issues, maybe some more mentality stuff. I think there was an interview or a press conference with Jimbo earlier this season, maybe coming right out of camp, where he kind of mentioned in passing that players needed to learn how to play through these nicks and knacks. I think, I don't know if you remember this, but he definitely highlighted this in one of the early pressers. And to me, that's a lack of toughness. I mean, it's football. You're going to play through nicks and knacks. You're going to have to. And apparently players weren't practicing through some of that stuff in camp. So I think Moffitt really fixes that. And Chris, I think you mentioned the O-line and Bryce Foster maybe regressing a little bit. Well, we can go ahead and talk about Adam Cushing, because I do think Adam Cushing, who is the O-line coach now at A&M, Tommy Moffitt, and Colin Klein are all going to work hand in hand to make this O-line better. First of all, Colin Klein's scheme, but Adam Cushing is a major contrast, in my opinion, to what Steve Addazio was before. I think Addazio is more of like your hardcore, old school, I don't know how to describe it, but like kind of just like the old school vibe, a yeller, just very much an intensity kind of a guy.
It's very blue collar.
Very blue collar. That's the right way to say it. And I'm not saying Adam Cushing is not that, but when I hear Adam Cushing talk, and if you guys look on YouTube, there are some like coaching clinics that he's done that I've listened to that get me excited. He's very direct and down to earth and tactical with his approach. And that to me is hand in hand with what Elko is like. Elko's very organized. He's very, I guess, tactical. Is intelligent the right word? I don't know, but it just seems more in line with what Elko wants to do. And I think you need to zig where the O-line has been zagging, because the O-line has been bad for a couple of years. And like y'all said, like we've been saying, there's been regression amongst players like Foster and Fothery. I don't know about you guys. I thought Layden Robinson didn't take off the way he could have this year. I feel that's the way the whole O-line has been over the last couple of years, just not progressing as we had hoped. And I really like the contrast going from Addazio to Cushing. And I mean, Cushing's been an O-line coach for a long time. I mean, where's he been? He was at Duke before. I forget where he was before that. He was at Northwestern, right, for 15 years or something like that as the O-line coach.
Yep.
He only gave up 15 sacks last year, and that was their down year of the two Elko years, I think. I'm really excited about Cushing in this O-line, and also Colin Klein. Just a new style, more innovative, more willing to get playmakers involved, and a little bit more creative with the O-line, X's and O's and that kind of thing. If you go look at some of his film, it's some interesting stuff. I don't know if you guys have done a deep dive on Colin Klein yet. I've started to dabble. You're going to see some different looks by this O-line this year, and I think that could help these guys out quite a bit. How do you feel about these two guys?
I love him. I love it. I mean, it's going to be, like you said, like you see these clips, especially in the run game, and we've had, I think, really good running backs and veteran offensive line in some years that have kind of hidden some of the problems that run game had, like the lack of creativity. There is no lack of creativity with Colin Klein.
Innovator, man, yeah.
Innovator. Like he has guards moving all the place. You're going to see kind of a different kind of offensive lineman being recruited. I think you're going to start seeing, faster linemen being recruited, like guys that can get to the second level.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That might take a couple years to get those guys in. I think you saw I mean, Dorian Hinton, we'll get into transfer portal guys later. I mean, he's a little bit smaller, but definitely a quick guy. Like I like what they're I like what they got. I like what they got. I mean, CD, what are your thoughts on Colin Klein here? I know you love the hire almost more than I did.
Yeah, and I thought it was super impressive. What he did with some, I guess I wouldn't say limited talent at Kansas State because there were some nice players there, but I definitely think he maximized a lot of what he had there. He was a very, I would call it, just innovative quarterback in general when he played back at Kansas State there. Did a lot of fun things. Him and Coach Snyder there. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. Seen some of his clips, like you said, on Twitter, the fun things he does, and just the total motion and different misdirection that you feel like you've been missing from a Jimbo Fisher offense. You got a little bit this year. I was impressed with Bobby Petrino offensively. You know, I wouldn't have hated if he stayed on, but obviously I understand that there was probably a change needed with Mike Elko bringing in his own guys he wanted and his own direction and culture. But in terms of pure scheme and culture, and I think Colin Klein can be a damn good recruiter too. I think his ability to connect with this generation, and whatnot, and obviously sell the Aggie program and everything that comes with it. Plus, you know, getting some talent in that room right there. Obviously, Connor Wigman is a guy I know me and Matthew are super high, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Andrew, on him if we get there. But yeah, I think he can do some special things, and I know Kansas State was pissed when they let him go or had to let him go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that and I do feel under Jimbo that as great as of players that we did see at times. I mean, Anais Smith, A-Chain, Isaiah Spiller, some of these guys were great, but I never felt like any offensive player reached their potential in college. Even A-Chain, I feel like wasn't utilized to the fullest. They used him between the tackles a lot, but you look at how Miami uses him now, getting him in space, he's a lethal weapon. I just think that, and you think about more recently, Moose Muhammad, we didn't see him till the end of the year, and every time he touches the ball, something amazing happens. So I
Tell me
am
about
more
it.
confident. Yeah, I know. I know you know, Matt. I know you know. But I'm just way more confident in guys that need the ball to get the ball as well under Klein. Because I think he's mentioned it. I mean, even Petrino mentioned it. We saw it to an extent, but I just made a complaint about last year where Moose Muhammad didn't get the ball. Feed the studs. That should absolutely be the mantra when you have the talent that A&M does offensively. With Jimbo, I felt like it was always trying to he tried so hard to stick to his scheme. He tried so hard to remain unpredictable that at times I feel like players weren't showcased or utilized to the best of their ability. I'm really excited about that to change here.
I agree. I mean, you look at and I talked about the run game earlier. I mean, A&M was 90th in the country in rushing yards per game, 88th in rushing yards per attempt. You know, and we only ran the ball 49% of the time, which was in the much lower half, and some of that had to do with being down in games, but
Yeah,
just
sure.
not a very effective run game this past year. And I am excited to see that change. Any other coaches that you really like that Mike Elko's brought on?